Hey guys, it's Sam. Welcome back to Vlogmas. Today we're going to be talking about series that I've DNF'd or I'm DNFing, like officially as of the end of 2022. Most of these are series that I've decided that I've DNF'd throughout the year, but maybe I haven't told you guys about. Or there's been some series that I've kind of considered in limbo that I'm officially saying I'm DNFing. There's a few in here that I could be persuaded on, and you probably won't be shocked about those because I've talked about them before and like my being back and forth on them. But yeah, these are pretty, either for sure I'm DNFing or like I'm really far in the like it's probably gonna happen, and the longer it goes on that I haven't continued, the more likely it gets they're getting like totally DNF'd. As with any video that's about DNFing, I hate that I have to do this, but y'all be acting a mess in the comments sometimes. If I'm DNFing your favorite series, it has nothing to do with you. I'm not even necessarily saying that the series is bad. In some cases, I do think it is bad. In some cases, it's just like wasn't for me, it just didn't connect to me, I didn't read it at the right time, whatever. It's not a personal attack, so don't be talking like that down in the comments because I'll just ignore you. But let's get into it, shall we? Starting off strong and with one of the first books that I read this year, you guys are not gonna be surprised by this. It's the These Violent Delights duology by Chloe Gong. This was the Romeo and Juliet sort of retelling with like a mafia family, wasn't really fantasy. We go in and talk about all this in the House Salt Book Club live show for this book. It almost put a lot of us into a slump. It was just, I think, poorly written. And I have no desire to read the second book. Apparently the second book is just a rehash of the first book with the characters' sort of motivations and ideas about the other one flipped. Absolutely not. I want nothing to do with it. Am I completely against reading something from Chloe Gong in the future? I don't know. She does have a series coming out that's supposed to be a Mark Antony and Cleopatra thing that has me like semi-intrigued, but like, I don't know if I can trust it, you know? Anyway, this series for sure, no, not gonna continue. Another series from Book Club is The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. This was shocking to me because I really thought that I would at least like it for what it was. I will be reading her other books. Again, I'm really excited about the new book in the Priory, like, sort of world. I loved Priory of the Orange Tree, things like that. Her, like, epic fantasy, yes. This, no. There's some people that say that, like, it gets better. The first book was so bad. Like, so viscerally bad, and I know it was so of its time and whatever, but, like, I truly cannot comprehend how the same person wrote that in Priory. And I know that she was, like, 19 when she wrote Bone Season, but, like, it was so bad. So like good for her for like improving so much. But yeah, I will not be continuing with that. That was a mess. And again, almost put me in a slump. Book Club was rough this year. Next we have The Fever series by Karen Marie Moning. I was gonna continue this for Sarah Jane's sake, but then earlier, was it middle of the year shift-a-thon? I think beginning of the year shift-a-thon. I read the second book in this series and I was like, you know what? No. I get that people love it. I get that it's like a classic to a lot of people. I can't. And she has since told me some of the plot points and I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad I didn't continue because I'm annoyed. And like how long it gets drawn out for us to figure out some like just sort of minor in the grand scheme of things details, no. So yeah, there's plenty of urban fantasy series. I think if I would have read this back in the day when I was reading urban fantasy, like as a teen and like college student, I would have loved these. It's just, it's past its prime for me. It has not aged well. And I think a lot of you that love it are running off of nostalgia for it, and that's totally fine. I have series like that too. I can't now. No, I have another series like that. Let's just talk about that right now. I also DNF'd the Stray series by Rachel Vincent, the Shifter series by Rachel Vincent, another series that Sarah Jane got me into. I did get four books into this, but the first book was so good and I still stand by that. Second book was so bad. Third book was like kind of making it up to me, and then fourth book was like so bad again, and I can't. And again, I've read more like synopses in this. It's an urban fantasy series. It takes place around like werecats. It's such a sexist, misogynistic society, and the writing has so much filler in it. These books would be so much shorter, and it's just a lot of the same story, like redundant over and over. Again, if I would have read that as a like high schooler, like newer to reading like fantasy and things, maybe I would have been more into it. This point in my life, no. There's better, more complex urban fantasy, like Anita Blake and Kate Daniels, my babies, that I would rather be spending my time with. And again, they're not without their flaws. This one is just, the writing quality is not there for me, unfortunately. Here's what I'm on the fence about. and you guys already know it's coming. It's the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee. We read this for book club. Book club was so rough this year, and I didn't hate the first book. I didn't think it was necessarily poorly written. It just wasn't resonating for me, and it put us, almost all of us, in a book slump, reading slump. But like, I'm intrigued enough about the second book, kind of, but I don't know what would push me over the edge to actually read it because I am terrified of not liking it. Not terrified, but I just don't want to be in a slump. I just don't know when I would be like, yeah, now it's the time to try this, you know? Maybe a buddy read, I guess, might, but I'm not even really in the mood to buddy read these days. So yeah, I don't know when this will happen. It might just be like indefinitely in limbo, but pretty soon I'm gonna start like forgetting a lot of key points, and I don't wanna have to reread the first book. So yeah, I've heard such mixed things whenever I talk about this series. People are like, oh my god, the second book was like so much better. Some people are like, oh my god, the second book was so much worse. There's no, you know, consensus about this, which there usually isn't for books. They're subjective, but there's really not. And that alarms me and my decision making around this. So maybe DNF, but like I want to enjoy it the way that everyone that enjoys it does, you know? But I don't know if I can. Then we have The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh. I liked this just fine. This is like a vampire paranormal historical setting story. First book was like very sort of paranormal. No, first book was more like mystery with like dashes of paranormal. Second book got like very paranormal. I was kind of into it, but I'm just like, you know, I'm not interested. By the time the third book came out, I don't think it's finished. Maybe the fourth book did come out. I don't remember. There's 4 books that are gonna be in the series though, and I just completely lost interest. I don't wanna have to reread them. Like a YA series at this point has to be like peak phenomenal for me to be really interested. So like Legendborn and like Iron Widow and things like that, in my opinion. So this just isn't that. And so I'm like, there's so many other like really truly good series, like well written, in my opinion, engaging series that I could be reading. And so YA is just not hitting that for me. It's not really what I'm like drawn towards, so I'm fine leaving this where it is. I don't think about these characters, like, it's fine. Here's another question mark, but leaning pretty towards the no. The Lightbringer series by Brent Weeks. This is one that I started trying to read like way late in the game anyway. I was very like late to the party on this. All the books were out and I heard really good things, but I didn't like love the first book. It wasn't like the strongest start. It was whatever, it was fine. There was some like intriguing twists and things here with some like personal, you know, interpersonal kind of dynamics. But people say that the last book, or maybe even the last 2, are like horrible. And like books 3 and 4 are like the best in the series, but then it just tanks. And I'm like, I don't know. For a 6-book series, adult fantasy, like chunky adult fantasy, when there's so many adult fantasies I want to get to and new ones coming out and whatever, I just don't know if I can like really make myself read that for it to then just, I know it's gonna go downhill. And it's sort of like universally agreed upon that it has a bad ending. So I don't think I want to do that. If you guys really disagree and you're like, no, the ending is actually so good and like keeps getting better in each book, let me know. I don't think so from what I've seen. Then the Divine Cities series by Robert Jackson Bennett. I started reading this, or I read the first book in this because I really love the Foundry Side series, which is another series that I'm kind of like, am I gonna read that last book? I don't know, because people have also said with that one that they don't feel like it was as good, and like Foundry Side was the best in the series, and then they've each gotten worse. I don't know, I only have that last book to read. Maybe I will. Like, Locklands, I don't know. I was excited about it, and then I've forgotten. I don't really want to reread. We'll see. So that one's like also a tentative DNF. I like Robert Jackson Bennett's writing, but the Divine Cities was just like, it didn't grip me, that first book. I don't want to have to reread it, and I've forgotten a lot about it, and I'm just not intrigued enough. So if I'm gonna finish anything of his, it's gonna be the Foundry Side series and then whatever he comes out with next. And lastly, another one I'm on the fence about, leaning a little more towards like I might still continue, because they're just pretty easy to read, and that's the Greatcoats series by Sebastian de Castell. This is sort of like a Three Musketeers-y type series. The thing here is, there's like some issues with it, and like the character goes through it a lot. In the way of like fits maybe from like Robin Hobb, although I do think Robin Hobb's a better writer, although Sebastian de Castell's not bad. But he goes through it and it's like really hard to read. The world is like very sort of like grimdark, like very like sort of black and white in like the villains and stuff, a little bit cookie cutter, two-dimensional in that way. And the romance that he is being, like the main character is being set up with is like, there was kind of like a supernatural rapey vibe to it at the beginning. And I'm like, ooh, we're gonna be romanticizing this? I don't know. So I don't know, there's just like some uncomfortable things with it. Like I'm just a little uncomfy with it. It's also like the friendship stuff in here is really cool. Like some of the combat stuff's really fun. It's really easy to listen to on audiobook. So there's like pros and cons here. I don't want to say it's like all bad and you guys are like, why are you even thinking about reading it? Because there's some good things here. But yeah, I think there's 2, I think it's a quartet. There's 5, I don't know. But I think it's a quartet. I've read 2. And I think the next book involves a lady greatcoat, because right now there's like these greatcoats so far in this band are like all men. I think the lady one comes in, and I would like to see her. But yeah, I'm kind of like, okay, if I pick it up on audiobook, I have nothing else to read, yeah. So it's more of an In Limbo series, but like, again, leaning sort of towards DNF. But if you guys have read that series and you're like, no, they get so good, let me know. And I'll move it up to more In Limbo than DNF. But yeah, those are the series that I've officially DNF'd this year. I don't think I've forgotten anything. But comment below, let me know some series that you've DNF'd this year. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.